Okay, so I'm going to do my next video on in defense of, modern day Satanism and a romantic's interpretation of Satan as the anti-hero. The Satan in Satanism, there's two things. I'm going to do another two videos, one on the Canaanite religion, which gave birth to Judaism, and through Judaism to all of the Abrahamic belief systems, and how Judaism is based in Baal worship. And that should be an interesting video. I took down my last one because I was concerned that YouTube might find it offensive to a certain group of tiny-headed people. And I took it down because I didn't want any repercussions. I took down a lot of my videos recently that I thought YouTube might have a problem with because they're starting to purge people. And I still need this video to flirt with my friend from Argentina because, long distances and, being blocked and everything else. But let's get into the video. So originally I was going to entitle this video, How Satanism Killed My Father and Why It Doesn't Have to Kill You. How did Satanism kill my father? I think I mentioned this in like 2 videos. I'm not a big fan of mentioning this because I don't like people to judge me by this. And that would be that my father had committed suicide after the passing of his mother, my maternal grandmother. We don't really know why. There was no note, no nothing, what have you. One of the things that my father suffered from was a very bad identity crisis. You see, he was raised in a strict Christian household, his father being an Episcopal minister. You will notice a lot of people drawn to Satanism tend to be raised in conservative Christian households. Now, my father was still a conservative. In fact, he was more than a conservative. He was a Rockwell-style National Socialist. Okay, so he was more than a regular conservative, more to the right than a regular conservative, but he was drawn to Satanism, in particular LaVeyan Satanism. And what destroyed him was he could not divorce himself from the theism of his youth, the belief in God, essentially. Now remember, I said Satanism does hold God to be true. In the header, under the header, Want It God, Dead or Alive, LaVey states that the Satanist does believe in God. It's a different interpretation of God. It's a pantheistic interpretation of God. And I will be making a 4th video dealing with my journey from Satanism to scientific pantheism and later to a semi-theistic form of Satanism, a semi-theistic form of pantheism. I didn't sleep very much last night. A semi-theistic form of pantheism. Pantheism is theistic. What I mean is a semi-spiritual form of pantheism involving the universal truths of religion, which I always believed were there, but it took a while for me it took me reading Ellen G. White's books, and it took me reading John Harvey Kellogg's books and learning about John Harvey Kellogg to finally get into these universal truths that are present in all religions. So essentially, what one has to understand is that Satanism borrows, it's a codified religion, codified from many philosophies. These philosophies, and it's codified into a religion based off of European fertility cults and things of that nature. And that would be what Satanism is. But the philosophies are really what comes to mind when one thinks of LaVeyan Satanism, whether they know it or not. And the 2 main philosophers that stick out if you read the works are Ragnar Redbeard. In fact, the whole Book of Satan, which is the first book of the Satanic Bible, is literally plagiarized. There are some changes here and there, but it's a literal plagiarization of Ragnar Redbeard's book, Might is Right, where Ragnar Redbeard reverses the Sermon on the Mount. Okay, and that's literally plagiarized by Anton LaVey in the Satanic Bible. And then you also have a lot of the philosophies are very objectivist in Satanism. It's very much based on Ayn Rand's objectivism. He does claim to have interspersed with concepts like Nietzscheism, and there is aspects of the will to power and things like that in his work, in LaVey's work, in Satanism, but it's not really at the forefront. What is really at the forefront is the rational self-interest, or what rational self-interest is what Ayn Rand promoted, and that's what's primarily promoted by Satanism, LaVeyan Satanism. So basically what you have is you have a religion that's been codified out of two main philosophers, Ragnar Redbeard and Ayn Rand, and it's been interspersed with occultism. Now, modern-day Satanists do not like the idea that Satanism has anything to do with the occult. Some of them even pretend to say that they don't believe in occultism, which is not true. Some have stated that the ritual chamber is merely a form of catharsis, when it is clearly stated in the 11 Rules of the Earth, or no, it might be the Satanic Sins, I don't remember off the top of my head, it's been years since I've really read these things, that if you deny the powers of magic after using magic to obtain your ends, you will lose what you have obtained. Now that sounds like a lot of hocus pocus to me, but it's clear that that LaVey himself, at least, believed in magic, okay, and that you could make things happen through the sheer power of your will, as did Aleister Crowley. So that goes without saying that that's the reality. Now, if people don't understand what Ayn Rand's philosophy is, or what Ragnar Redbeard's philosophy is, I would strongly encourage people to read the book Might is Right by Ragnar Redbeard, and I would read Ayn Rand's works, but not her novels. Her novels are boring as sin, honestly. I've never been a fan of novels or fiction of any kind. I like her non-fiction books. But the thing is, Romanticism is at the heart of Satanism. It is a modern romantics manifesto of individualism and the need for individual self-interest. And that is also what's at the heart of objectivism, though objectivism, see, this is the thing, with Romanticism, one is thinking subjectively. And part of this is in Satanism with the concepts of total environments and things of that nature, but not so with objectivism. So I would say that LaVeyan Satanism borrows more from Romanticism than pure objectivism, although Ayn Rand did write a book called The Romantics Manifesto, and Ayn Rand does support subjectivity for the purpose of promoting the ideal. Okay, so Ayn Rand does support Romanticism, but Satanism is Romanticism, which has been forged from these other philosophies. And there are smatterings of things like Nietzscheism and things like this. But what I think is important to understand, and what I think is actually true, is what LaVey points out is he calls these people like proto-Satanists or de facto Satanists or things of that nature, these pre-satanic Satanists, for lack of a better word, like Benjamin Franklin and the members of the Hellfire Club and people of that nature. And I would have to agree. I do think there is a dark undercurrent, what's considered dark undercurrent of humanity. And I do believe that, as LaVey has stated, that a Satanist is born, not made. I firmly believe that that is an accurate statement. I believe that there are people, primarily with the dark triad characteristics, that are geared towards a satanic outlook, and Satanism gives them an opportunity to not be antisocial. As Anton LaVey stated in the Satanic Bible, practicing magic should be a group activity, as otherwise, like the forms of worship of Satanism in a way, the use of the ritual chamber and such is a group activity, because anything less than that would result in antisocial behavior, which is what you see with a lot of these children in the 1980s and such that were not affiliated with satanic groups. Most of them actually were Wiccans or other parts, like other kinds of neo-pagan type belief systems that had committed bad acts in the name of the devil. And people would like to say, oh, well, there was a satanic Bible found at the scene, or blah, 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 blah. Well, how many Christians have committed murders? Doesn't make all Christians the devil. Look at the modern-day Catholic Church. I will leave another link to the investigation, the investigation by the state of Pennsylvania into the Catholic Church in Pennsylvania. A lot of the things that these Catholic priests did to these children were exactly the same things that were accused, or that were alleged that the Satanists had done to children. The only difference was the Satanists did not do it. Michael Aquino's life was damn near ruined over false accusations. Meanwhile, these Catholic priests can run around molesting children all day and all night, and they're outside the realm of the law. And that's what's highly, highly disturbing. That's why I find it, like I said, I have a soft spot in my heart for Satanists, Catholics, and Christians, and other fake people that are saying one thing and doing a complete other. I don't have that same soft spot for. I actually find it very difficult to understand how somebody, when my mother converted to Catholicism, she had always wanted to convert to Catholicism because her father was Catholic and her mother was Catholic. They converted to Presbyterianism because the priest refused to baptize my mother at birth because they said she wouldn't make it. So the priest didn't even bother to come in to baptize the child or to bless the child or whatever the hell. I'm not 100% familiar with the hocus pocus of Catholicism. After that, my grandparents, whom I never met, both died prior to my birth, they converted to Presbyterianism. But my mother reconverted to Catholicism when she met her significant other. After my father's passing. And it was ridiculous because I had to help her with catechism class because she's not a quick study, or she wasn't a quick study. She's been dead for quite some time now. And it was kind of ridiculous because like she told me, I'm like, why don't you just join any other religion? What religion should I join if you're so smart? Because she knew that I read a lot about comparative religions and things like that. And I said, how about any form of religion that doesn't have molesting children as basically one of its de facto sacraments, for goodness sakes? I mean, this is a religion that has practiced the molestation of children for well over 1,000 years. And it's not like there's a lack of evidence. There's evidence everywhere. Everywhere there's evidence of this, from Ireland and Mexico and Argentina and Chile and Haiti and Africa. You can't go somewhere where the Catholic Church hasn't been. I mean, for God's sakes, they're probably molesting penguins in Antarctica for all we know. I mean, I would highly doubt that the Vatican does not have an observation thing in the Antarctic. I would almost guarantee you they do. They're ready to spread the gospel to space aliens, and that's not an exaggeration, it's the truth, and if I can find it, I'll put it in the description. But yeah, I mean, totally insane things that that Satanists are accused of, when in reality the people that are accusing the Satanists are the ones doing it. And so what killed my father was he could not get right. Like, now that Dog the Bounty Hunter is looking for Brian Laundrie because of that whole Petito situation, I can say this because it's kind of humorous. I never liked Dog the Bounty Hunter, but when I was living with a roommate when Dog the Bounty Hunter was out that was a big fan of pro wrestling and monster trucks and NASCAR and all that good stuff. And we were watching Dog the Bounty Hunter because that's what he liked to watch. And, you know, what does Dog the Bounty Hunter say when he can't? Gotta get right with Christ, bruh. Gotta get right with Christ. Gotta get right with Christ, bruh. Well, before you can get right with Christ or Satan, either way, Christ or Satan, you gotta get right with yourself. If you're not right with yourself, you can't be right with anything else. And that was my father's problem. My father was never right with himself. My father had lost his leg in a motorcycle accident at the age of 18. He was a softball player, baseball player, he ran track, and he was fond of gymnastics and things of that nature. So losing his leg at such an early age, I assume, would be very tough for him, to the point where he would belittle my brother and I, that we had two legs, why didn't we use them more, and blah, 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 blah. My early years in karate were filled quite a bit with, criticism about, I'm not doing this right, I'm not doing that right, blah, 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 blah. So my father was quite critical of everyone else because he wasn't right with himself. He was disappointed with himself. While all of his friends went over to fight in Vietnam, he could not because he had lost his leg in a motorcycle accident. Now, in retrospect, that was his fault for not obeying his father. And it happened on Christmas Day. Christmas Day was when he found out he lost his leg. It had happened on Christmas Eve. My grandfather had basically told him, you're not going out on these roads like this, and he went out anyway. And a car hit him and threw him quite a distance, causing him to lose his leg, which caused him to grow quite cynical of life, okay, and of people, and of everything. And Christmas was not a very fun time in my household. So essentially what had happened is this is what drew him to this undercurrent, this satanic undercurrent. It also got my grandmother to effectively disown the Episcopal Church, because a lot of my father's problems, and they are right, it came from my father's own doing. My father's use of drugs and alcohol and, womanizing and things of that nature. So a lot of my father's issues were caused by my father, and that was the view of my grandfather, because he was an Episcopal minister. And he was raised in a strict Mormon household prior to becoming an Episcopal minister. So it was not, I would say that my father was spoiled as a child. Now, my grandfather was not there during his upbringing. My father was birthed in 1946. 1946 he was birthed. So my grandfather was not there when he was in the Korean War, but after World War II, he was back for a time, but he wasn't there during the formative years of my father's life. And I believe that my father was spoiled quite a bit. He was very close with his mother. When my mother passed away, he didn't know what to do, and he started turning to all sorts of crazy, kooky, supernatural, spiritual bullcrap like tarot cards and New Age nonsense and all this. So when I say Satanism killed my father, it's important to understand that there's a saying in Satanism that the Satanic Bible can only bring you to yourself. It can't bring you to anything other than yourself. You either agree with it or you don't agree with it. And sometimes even if you agree with it, you may not actually be a Satanist, which is the camp that I fall into. There are some people I do not have, in my opinion, I don't meet the dark triad enough to be a Satanist. Okay, and I do believe that Satanists are born and not made. I do see myself as a scientific pantheist. I am a scientific pantheist, and I will be expanding on this in another video. There are links in the description, but you have to understand, one does not become a Satanist by selling one's soul to the devil. One does not become a Satanist by making a deal with the devil or chanting anything. As LaVey said, a Satanist is born, not made. It's a very unique set of character traits amongst true Satanists. I would go so far as to say the majority of modern Satanists are not Satanists. And you know what? This is not all for this video, because I forgot I have a link to the Satanic Temple in the description. And what is the Satanic Temple? The Satanic Temple is anti-satanic Satanism. And what do I mean by that? People might remember that I've made a number of videos about how Anton LaVey was pro-life. In fact, in the Satanic Bible, he makes a pro-life statement that a stupid woman that has never made a proper choice in her life should not have the right to abort a baby simply because its life resides within her. And he was very pro-life, and I will leave links showing that he was pro-life. But more importantly, the Satanic Temple is an anti-satanic Satanism in the sense that it is egalitarian. Now, Satanism, the reason Satanism finds it unethical to take someone's life against their will, which obviously, and the thing is with Satanism is the reason why is because life is sacred. Life is the most sacred thing because all we have is the here and now according to Satanism. Okay, there is no afterlife. There is no heaven of glory bright, nor hell where sinners roast, as it says in the book of Satan, and in Ragnar Redbeard's book, Might is Right. So all you have is the here and now, therefore life is the most sacred thing. Without life you have no other rights. Try having freedom. If you're dead, you can't. And then LaVey in other works stated that he had a painting called Equality, and it was a bunch of skeletons, because in death, you can't tell who's rich and who's poor and what have you. You're just dead, and that's the deal there. You know, there's a similar thing with the organization Skull and Bones, where can you tell if this is a rich man's skeleton, a poor man's skeleton, or this skeleton, or that skeleton? No, you can't. It's a skeleton, because in death you can't take anything with you. Okay, you have what you have now, and that's that. And that is why life is so sacred to a Satanist. And that is why depriving life to an unborn infant, simply because the mother whims it to be and chooses to do it, is unsatanic, according to Anton LaVey. Now, in later books, I forget whether it was The Devil's Notebook or Satan Speaks, but LaVey talks about how, of course, the answer is compulsory birth control. But nobody wants to do birth control. I have my own reservations about birth control. I don't think that I believe in practicing abstinence if you don't want to get pregnant. That's just my opinion. And I believe that I do believe in sex for reproductive purposes and pleasure, but I believe reproduction should be pleasurable. And I believe nature chose to make reproduction pleasurable for a very good reason, and I'll get into that when I get into pantheism and how many of the world religions actually are foreshadowing nature's dictates. Nature's law is present in many of the world religions, but nobody's looking for this. And the laws of health, I think, are a great example of such a thing. So my point is that the Church of Satan and the Satanic Temple, which embraces egalitarianism and social justice, is very much opposed to the original dictates of the Church of Satan, although now the Church of Satan is trying to out-liberal the Satanic Temple. And the Satanic Temple, what I find highly suspect, and I'm not sure, I was on their website, but I'm not sure, the Church of Satan has the writings of Anton LaVey as canonical texts, as does the First Satanic Church, which is Carla LaVey's more accurate version of a Satanic Church. But as far as I'm aware, the Satanic Temple doesn't have any sacred writings or sacred religious manifesto or anything of that nature. It has a couple of dictates that are very unsatanic and are very geared toward egalitarianism, and egalitarianism is anti-satanic. If one reads the writings of Ragnar Redbeard or Ayn Rand, one would quickly find that these dictates are not in sync with LaVeyan Satanism. My opinions, when I started becoming more of a National Socialist, a true National Socialist, and a true Peronist, a true Justicialist, and I started embracing social justice, not the crazy kind of social justice, but just regular social justice, as Juan Perón did, I started realizing, I'm not really that in sync with this sort of thing anymore. And I need to, even though I was a scientific pantheist since I was in my mid-20s,
I started realizing I had to start deviating more from Satanism to be more honest with myself about who I was. And that's why I am a scientific pantheist. That is what I am. And I embrace transhumanism. And I don't have a religion. And I'm going to get into the fact why I don't need a religion, why philosophy suffices for me, but why some people do. And that will be in later videos in this series. And that's all for this video.